We are Gray Sky Films, and we have a podcast. We talk about stuff that matters.
Welcome to the Gray Sky Films podcast, where we break down what actually goes into building strong, effective video content. This episode is not about what happens when the camera starts rolling. It's about what happens before the camera starts rolling. Today, we're talking about pre-production, why the success of a shoot is usually decided long before you step on set, and how the best teams solve problems early so the day itself is smooth, efficient, and controlled.
And today we are joined in this episode by Hanna and Brennan. Welcome. And action. No, anyway, so let's dive into this. Hanna, you're a production manager. I think you've AD'd, you've second AD'd before. Brennan, you're primarily an AD. Yep. So let's start with you, Brennan.
Let's talk about what is an AD.
That's what I was going to ask him. What is an AD?
Sure. I'm a first assistant director primarily. The AD simplistically creates, maintains, and executes the shooting schedule.
The schedule.
The schedule. That's the main thing. But there's lots of elements to that, balancing departments, all this sort of stuff. But we basically try to take the pressure off the director so the director can focus on the creative, make sure that the crew's ready to go, and that everything's happening on time and in the proper order.
And how does that differ from what a second AD then does, just to define terms?
Yeah, good question. A producer friend of mine put it best, I think. It's kind of front of the house and back of the house, if you think of a restaurant. So, I'm with, kind of core technical crew, lighting, art, everybody like that. And then the second AD would primarily be running talent, getting them through the works, getting them on set, prepping them on what we're shooting and the order, because most of the time we're shooting out of order. And so essentially we try to align the front of the house and the back of the house so that everything's ready at the same time. That's the dream. It's rare that it happens that way.
Right. It's
That's
the dream,
what we
but
try
rare.
to do. Yeah.
And then, Hanna, how does that different than what a production manager does? And I know sometimes on smaller shoots, a production manager is a production manager, partly first AD, partly sometimes second AD. So sometimes we are combining roles depending on the size of shoot, but you do a lot of production managing.
Yes, especially with Gray Sky, but that is essentially organizing and overseeing the logistical and operational side of things to make sure that everything that we plan to shoot, we can actually shoot, that both the creative team can execute what they need, but then we can do it, stay on budget, stay within the schedule, people get fed, just all the very practical execution of the plan.
A little line producer mixed in there as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I always say this, the success of production and even then post, what you get is in pre-production. When I say that, what does that mean to both of you on a high level? The success of pre-production and post-production is pre-production.
Oh, me first? I totally agree with that. I actually have that on my website that I start in prep, and that's kind of a hint to producers that may hire me. Try to start me early. I think there's kind of a misnomer that some less experienced directors I've worked with maybe would think that, this strict schedule and all this prep is going to limit creativity. And I think it's the exact opposite. We're always flexible on set. Things change, the environments change if you're outside, whatever it is, things change, we adapt. But the better plan we have going in, just the better prepared we are, not to use the word, but it actually allows more freedom. It allows more flexibility because we're ready. We know what's coming up next. We move quicker. We move more efficiently. And that gives us actually more room to get the performances from not just talent, but from crew as well that make a good product at the end of the day.
A strong schedule gives us an idea of where the day is going and how we can rearrange it if needed.
100%.
It also just changes the dynamic on set and the vibe on set. If everybody is on the same page and knows what's coming next and is excited about the plan that we've all pitched in to create, then you can really enjoy the process and not be nervous or freak out or have to pivot too much about things that are unanticipated.
Yeah, and when things change, it's easier to say we're going from this to this instead of explaining what we're going to because nobody knows what we're trying to shoot.
And you almost give people the ability to self-manage in a way, especially hair, makeup, and wardrobe. If they understand,
Never give it hair and makeup.
if they understand, when the schedule is, they still need help, they still need guidance. Everybody does, but at least they'll be okay, I have a roundabout idea of when talent is needed on set, and that definitely helps keep the day moving.
it's production. Things are going to change naturally, right?
It's organized chaos.
Yeah.
But if you don't come in with that really kind of detailed schedule to start, you're behind the eight ball before you even get there, right? So that's what we're going to kind of explore. I know I used to be terrible at this. I used to shoot myself in my own foot. I used to direct, AD my own stuff sometimes. And I used to be like, okay, coming back from lunch, we're going to shoot from 1 to 2. But like, no, you need to build 15 and a half hour to get everybody back in the wardrobe or back mic'd up, and then I'd be like behind because I'm like, I already lost a half hour because I didn't think of that stuff. So it is something that you learn over time. It's not something maybe a young video producer may be able to fully figure out right out of the gate, depending on if
Let's
things
say
get-
green, not necessarily.
Green, yeah, young or whatever. Green. It does take some practice and understanding this stuff. But we're also not just talking about schedule from the point of we're shooting this and this. We're talking about a lot of things when it comes to pre-production, right? Even so much as to, I know you may deal with this, like loading in, where are we loading in? All the corporate shoots sometimes they'll go, oh no, you don't need. You can just come through the main. No, the elevators. No. We have to go through the freight elevators. I could tell you that. I most likely need a COI, certificate of insurance. Oh no, you don't need it. No, I do because I'm going to get stuck by the guy running the elevator saying you can't be here without this, right?
You can't roll this through the lobby.
Or even like where the crew's going to make home base. So talk about some of those challenges. Hannah, from a where are we staging? Where's hair and makeup going? Where's crafty going? Where are all these things going? Is sometimes figured out in location scouts, for lack of better. Let's talk about location scouting.
Yeah. So just the restrictions and the possibilities in the space just need to be outlined ahead of time, so you're not running into those delays. But also just so that load in can be as smooth as possible. There's so much time at the start of a shoot when people just need to be able to set up and be really prepared to get going. So. Exactly the space constraints there when we're like in hospitals and office buildings, when you've got operational spaces, that's a huge thing. Just how we're allowed to move through the space, how we can not impede the work of the people who are actually there, how we can have a point person who can have answers for us as we need them, because we're going to have a lot of answers as we
Shield
start
us
going.
from the nonsense sometimes. Yep.
And just like all the noise and the light, all the other factors that are going to go into what we need to do to capture the shot when we're actually rolling. Those things all need to be anticipated and discussed. And on a location scout, maybe the difference between the location scout, the tech scout, and the director's scout, as we were talking about earlier, is
A
a
couple
big.
different scouts. What
Yeah.
are all
Yeah.
three of those scouts, and why are they important in the pre-production process?
100%. So a lot of times, you'd start with location scout. It may just be the locations manager, whomever. They take pictures, they present options to the director, DP, the creative team. And then, they'll choose the locations that they want to look at. Then ideally you have a director's scout where they go in person and they talk about, okay, this angle and this angle, really try to map out the shots. Then you'd have a tech scout, where that's typically where I start. I'd like to be on the director's scout if I can, but we all have budget constraints. And then the tech scout, where, we talk with all the keys and the technical, department heads. How do we actually do all this? A lot of times, maybe the director's scout can't happen with the DP. Again, we're always working with budgets. And that's fine, and we work with it, and it still works. But it does, then we're spending time with, the gaffer and the key grip and the production designer and stuff, talking about figuring out the shots instead of already knowing what we want to do, and then we come in to talk about execution.
Having the creative locked so that you can actually focus on the logistics of how to get the content.
Ideally, yeah.
So with let's talk about, break those departments down a little bit further. So the gaffer and the key grip, what are they worrying about? What is their concern?
Sure. I mean, it's, it depends on the space, exactly what they're worrying about or planning for,
Planning for is a better way to say it, yeah.
The gaffer's the head of the electric department, so they're going to be talking about power and where it comes from, and do they need a generator truck? Does a putt-putt do the trick? Can we use house power? It all depends on the lighting sources, all that sort of stuff. The key grips, shaping lighting, doing rigging, putting the points in the ceiling if you're on a grid or however that works. So they work very closely together, but with a little bit, different goals on a tech scout, I guess. And then, at the end of that, they're going to put their gear list together. So,
And I think the big thing is production design too, like recreating the space from a artistic perspective, what they need to bring in.
yes. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, if you're shooting in a raw space, are they starting from scratch? Is it a hospital where it's already kind of there, but we got to move some things around? Are we shooting in a grocery store and everything's got a label on it that we can't show? Yeah, so, obviously the production designer is a huge part of that too. And the DP, production designer, director, all working in tandem. That's the smoothest way to figure it.
Yeah. And I know sometimes, on some of our other shoots, whether it's corporate world as well, sound, right? Is an air conditioner blasting and then we can't turn it off, or we buy an airport and there's planes landing every 20 seconds, and a lot,
Or an army
client doesn't
base.
usually think about that
Or
stuff.
we buy an army base and there's jet planes flying over and helicopters flying over. That's happened.
And a client's always like, you're standing in a room and they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm listening. This is very loud. Is there somewhere else we can go? Because this isn't going to work for a whole day being in this one location.
That's a great point. And you know who else doesn't think about that a lot is everybody. And when you do tech scouts, and the sound person is not on the tech scout, from my experience at least.
But I guess you sometimes may listen from your perspective as an AD or a production manager. I mean, you're trying to help everybody out as well, right?
100%.
And again, in pre-production, if you could stand in that space and wherever it may be and go, okay, there's something happening every 20 seconds here. This is not going to work. So much better to figure it out before than being there that day with everybody set up and you're like, oh crap.
Yeah,
we're
now
in
we have to
trouble.
move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I just did a tech this week for a job upcoming next week, and it's right underneath train tracks, and it's dialogue. So what are we going to do? I mean, we know that's where we have to shoot. So what are the options? And location said that's Amtrak. To me, I'm like, great, because they have a schedule. They're not MTA, and I have no idea when or if it's coming. Hopefully, it's not coming, and then we're all good. But so that's something we keep in mind. There's elements that are out of our control all the time, right? So if a train comes by, it comes by. We hold for sound. We get it again. I know that some of the fix it in post happens. It's set on every set still, mostly as a joke. But
We
the
have a whole
technology's
episode
come a long
talking
way.
about fixing it in post.
Good. I'll leave that for that
Because-
one then. But we try to make it as clean and seamless as we can.
Right.
And I, as an AD, I really try to equalize every department, if that makes sense, right? Where sound's a valuable department, hair and makeup are valuable departments, and I try to give everybody their proper time and set them up for success if I can. But at the end of the day, especially exteriors, you're working with the elements that are provided.
Well, and one thing I've really found with Gray Sky too, I mean, because you're owner, producer, and a first AD, I've done some second ADing and production managing everybody, and it's such a tight team who works together so consistently. A lot of us can anticipate each other's needs, and we all have a general understanding. Well, some departments very general, but we at least it's much easier to pivot, and it's much easier to get ahead of those things, and we all have like a deep respect for the different realms that we need to be covering when we're introducing a project and starting to look at it, and when we're in it as well. So I feel like that's a really, really helpful asset.
I think yes, thank you. Talking about the importance of the scouts and being able to pivot if needed. For us, from a corporate perspective, we don't usually get to do a lot of scouts. It'll just be the two of us, or maybe a Mark and a Matt that they go.
Or we ask them to take a video of a room or something,
So we don't always get to be there, be present. So we have to ask all those questions to the client. How big is the room? Is there noise? Is there power? Can we control the lights? How will we be interrupting the workflow of everybody around it? And a lot of times they're like, oh, it'll be fine, or no, we'll put out a memo and everybody will know. And then you get there and you're like, oh, okay, we need to pivot.
I think that's some of the experience again. Like, we ask the questions they're just not thinking of, because they may have not done this a lot or at all. And when they say it's okay, sometimes we do push back. Like, I know this is not okay.
Yeah.
I know me walking through the front of the building, going up the elevators is not going to be okay. And I don't want to cause headache. I just know it's going to be a headache the day of. So I'd rather call the headache now and go, can you get me in touch with the elevator company, right? Can you get me in
The
touch
building
with
manager. Yeah.
We don't need a COI. No, you do need a certificate. I'm telling you this. I know you need it, because we've been stuck. We've lost massive amounts of time early on because it took us 2 hours to get it in.
Yeah.
Because we're scrambling to get a COI that day of, and everybody's sitting there twiddling their thumbs trying to load in the building. That's not good for anybody.
We
Right.
recently filmed.
Right?
I mentioned-
It's like-
we recently filmed on a military base, and we asked ahead of time how long security would take, because it's military. You know that it's going to take a long time to get through military
How would you deal with this
security.
answer?
And they're like, well, it could take anywhere between half an hour and 3 hours.
Yeah.
3 hours.
Not helpful. Yeah.
Not helpful.
Not helpful.
But okay, but that's
But we're
the
going,
answer.
but we're going super early in the morning, so hopefully it'll be all right. So in planning out that schedule, I think you allotted
I allotted for
2
2 hours. I'm like, okay, 2 hours
And
is
it
the safety,
took
and it
about
almost
2
took.
hours.
We got up to the to sign in, and we were like, oh, that only took 30 minutes. It took another.
Yeah, like at least an
They
hour. and a-
moved, they moved quite a little slow. It took another 45 minutes, and we had to drive. Or like it took almost the 2 hours, and very thankful we had planned that from the get-go. If it took 3, I would have had to shift a little bit, but you go, all right.
But
3
we knew
seems a
that-
little excessive.
We knew to ask, and I think that's the biggest thing is when you're talking about green producers, ADs, whatever you want to call them. I don't think that they necessarily know the right questions to ask, and I think that only comes with experience and having to deal with
Having seen this pickle
the
before.
craziness
Yeah.
on the other side of not asking.
Yeah.
As that AD, are you on those location scouts, tech scouts? Are you problem solving some of that, or are you just primarily thinking of it from a schedule perspective? Let's say there isn't sufficient power. Are you part of the solving of that, or is that more of the producer's job in your world?
For something like sufficient power, I would rely on the gaffer and the producer probably to sort that, or the PM or whomever from the production rep. I am primarily thinking about schedule, but it all comes in, it's all the same thing at the end of
It all
the day.
comes
We're
to
all
the
doing
schedule.
the same
Right.
thing.
Because if they slows down, your schedule's screwed.
That's right.
Because this question wasn't answered.
Well,
Exactly.
one element that comes up a lot, because I've actually met him on a job where he was ADing with, is safety too. And the very first job, there was going to be a dancing bear on set. And he wasn't able to get in touch with and talk with the bear wrangler.
Oh, a
ahead
real
of the
bear.
shoot. A real
Real
bear.
a predator, yeah. Which is great. I'm like, that sounds fantastic. It's a feature film. Let's do it, But what the contingency was, I need to talk.
Was it
Obviously.
cocaine bear?
No cocaine, no cocaine on this. I mean, I don't know. I guess maybe. I don't know if the bear had a drug habit. I never met the bear, but I have to know what are the protocols. How is this going to operate? I know that the bear had to walk by Crafty to get to set, for example. That seems strange. How do we figure this out? Right? Can we figure it out? Yes. But I was never able to get in touch with the bear wrangler, and I'd been asking since my first day of prep. That's on my to-do list. It didn't happen. The day before, I'd asked and asked and asked. The day before, I told the producer, if you're bringing the bear to set, I won't be there. Because at the end of the day, I'm responsible for the crew
Yeah, it's
and the
safety.
safety, and I have to make that the number one priority at all times. And we ended up not using the bear, and it was kind of a bummer, but
A lot of
we
taxidermied
figured it out.
animals and stuff.
Exactly. But yeah, the safety component is huge. That's something I'm paying attention
Yeah.
to during scouts, of course.
I have 2 follow-up questions. First on the bear. In situations like that, and because we've never really worked with predator animals on set,
Dogs.
smaller animals, dogs, cats, whatever, but not something like that. Do you need to get everyone's on set's buy-in, like talent and other crew members? Like if people are not okay being around a bear, do they just leave set, or do you have to figure out a different plan?
To be honest, I don't know the protocols for having a predator on set because I didn't get there. I was hoping to learn it that job. I would if I come across that again before it would ever happens. Obviously, I would learn the protocols. They exist. I know that. I don't know them off the
But
top
again,
of my
these are
head,
protocols and we keep coming back to
Of
pre-production, right?
course,
It's
you don't
ama-
figure it out
That
on the
day.
set
Right.
what to do with this bear.
I know we've done a lot of pharma work with injection training videos, that type of thing, and there are live open needles on set and actors handling them.
protocol.
So yeah, there's
Safety
safety
protocol.
protocol with that for sure. And
Also driving shoots too.
driving shoots, letting people
100%.
know ahead of time that this is what they were going to be doing, and we expect you to be able to hold something and not hurt yourself. Yeah,
Yeah, all
definitely.
the same. I've worked with, weapons and stuff like
Okay.
that. Same thing, there's different protocols for if it's firing blanks or is it rubber. You treat every weapon obviously as a
Like
live
real
weapon.
thing, sure.
But there's different protocols for all that. The industry's not new.
Right.
We've come across these things over the years lots of times, and so that allows us to have a protocol already set up. We don't have to make it up as
And
we
then
go.
make it new to you, but you can go find the answers to some of this stuff.
Yes.
I think you just nailed another big topic in figuring out things in pre-production. We do a lot of driving shots, but outdoor. So outdoor contingencies of rain, clouds, sun, sound again, and how do you deal with all this? And coming up again with plans in pre-production for dealing with outdoor stuff, construction. you could also do this whole schedule, and all of a sudden there's a lawn crew, coming. How do
There's
you
always a
how do you
lawn
make
crew.
them go away?
There's always a lawn
That's
crew.
right.
Leaf blowers.
Leaf blowers.
But outdoors, another whole world when it comes to then, thinking
Direction
about
of the
this
sun and
in
stuff.
pre-production.
Yeah,
Right? I mean,
absolutely. The logistics of it, and also just the continuity of it, just making sure that, if you're starting in the morning and you're finishing at night, like your footage is going to be usable throughout the day too.
Also, it could be real hot or real cold. And how do you, if your actors are out, how do you make sure that they don't get sunburned? And again, they don't want to be standing there going, I wish we had a tent, or I wish we had a trailer, or I wish we had, stuff that I've dealt with. I've learned, again, throughout the way, like, oh, yeah, that would have been smart. But you also do rely on some of your departments, right? With your wardrobe department or hair and makeup. I've learned a lot through all these departments on how to be better in pre-production.
Sure.
to some
Well,
other
Grace,
stuff.
we were in Palm Springs filming at the racetrack, and it was 99
100
degrees.
115.
105.
It went up to 115.
Oh, on the asphalt.
But
it was
you
115.
anticipated all that. I mean, there was golf carts to shuttle people back. There was a designated amount of time that we were supposed to be out there. We had coolers standing by. Like, there was a
Electrolytes.
lot of safety conversations about how people were feeling and what they need, and it was anticipated.
Yeah, on that shoot we even had our the grip people set up shades for everybody. That was not gear we used for the actual shoot. It was just for crew safety and protection. Yeah.
And some emergency neck fans.
Yes, the
that
emergency
came in
neck
about
fans.
halfway through. Those were fun.
Yeah, and a medic would be something worth exploring too. For if the environment calls for. I mean, you want a medic on every shoot if you can, of course. It doesn't always happen that way, but that's somebody or a couple people or whatever you can really lean on. That they bring what you need to keep people safe throughout the day. That's
All things to think about in pre-production. I did have one other question. Sorry.
Go.
You were talking about when you scout and you're thinking only about the schedule. Are you responsible then for saying it's going to take 2 days versus 1 day? Do you make that decision, or do you go in
I
thinking?
wish I did. Yeah. No,
If
typically.
he's in time.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because I know for us, you start going through all the list of questions we have. We start talking about the specifics of a production and what the end product is going to be. And we usually decide amongst ourselves that this would be better in 2 or 3 days. And then we have to go tell the client it's going to be more.
Well, that was my segue into it, scheduling. Now, so you do these scouts, you've talked to departments. Now it comes down to you as the AD, right? To go, I got to put all this on a frickin' paper and figure this schedule out. I've come down sometimes to the 5 minutes on a schedule, or you go, all right, hopefully it doesn't get that granular all the time, right? But how do you begin to put this on a piece of paper? And then if it's a 10-hour day or 12-hour day, and then who's making the decision if it goes into overtime? We could talk about that secondary, but let's just talk about getting it down on a piece of paper.
Yeah, I mean, I've done hundreds and hundreds of schedules at this point, so it helps. The experience goes a long way. So a lot of times, hopefully, I can, if I'm in early enough, on the job early enough, I can have some sort of rough schedule for us going into the tech with. That's not as common as I'd like.
Right.
But just, here's all the shots laid out in the order that sort of makes sense. And then when we're teching, we have something solid to go with. But if not, I build it after the tech.
Now, are you talking to the DP? Because sometimes order of makes sense can be subjective, right? So Hannah can only she's an actress, she can only be here for a certain part of the day, but she's in this location and that location. But you want to do all your shots ideally in the one location before you move. But sometimes you have to build it around talent
Or client.
right?
Client
So
schedule. If someone, we have a lot of times we encounter clients that, I have to leave because I have a conference call, or we have this one quick little thing that we have to go do, and we'll be back, and it's okay. So we have to schedule around. Oh, the CEO can only be here for these 15 minutes.
Yeah, there's also the element of they want to prioritize these shots, but it might not, just putting them first doesn't put it in most efficient order.
So how do you deal with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really a case-by-case basis. That's a good point that Hannah's talking about is, well, there's several points. I don't know where to start. I think,
This is really what it comes down to.
yeah,
This
a
is
lot of
it
times
comes
what
down to.
happens is, to answer your first question, it's a 2-day shoot. That's what I'm working with, for example. And I can do the math pretty quick for the most part and be like, we're not going to do 45 shots in 1 day. I'm sorry that's already been sold through. Wish you would have brought me earlier, whatever.
That's very ambitious.
Yeah, so then it's like, okay, so how do we problem solve? Does an extra camera help? Does an extra camera body help so that we can have one getting set up on the jib while we do this, whatever. There's those sort of creative solutions. But at the end of the day, I can't make time. And I feel like sometimes that's the ask. So a lot of times I'll build a schedule that I believe is realistic, and it's supposed to be, let's say, a 12-hour day, and it's 19. And I present that to the producer. Producer presents that to whomever, and then they have to make the hard decision. Do we tweak creative? Do we add a pre-light? Do we split it into 2 days? So I typically present schedule options, and then they choose, the people above me will choose which option that they want to go with. So I sort of guide decision-making with versions of the schedule.
19 hours.
Oh, I've scheduled 20-plus hour days. We don't go into production with that schedule.
No, of course
But
not.
a lot of times people need to see it to believe it.
Right.
Like, this is how crazy you sound.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
Which I think is a rarity for Gray Sky, though, because you don't put, especially having an AD right there, you wouldn't put the team in that position of already having locked into a limited amount of time.
We have an interesting piece of that, of the production world pie, that we are a little bit more in control, I guess, is the
Well,
only
listen,
way
a
to
lot of
say
times
it.
I'm ADing my own
Yeah,
things. I'm
we are
directing,
able to
which
say-
I'm I'm arguing with myself.
And it's our
what I have to do or not do.
And it's typically our creative that we're like,
Sure.
oh, we are a little ambitious here. Let's scale this back ourselves, and we'll represent the creative then to the client versus a whole schedule.
Another thing with your voice, I'm curious because this has happened to us numerous times, and it's part of the account executive as well to kind of manage, expectations of client. And this is also why you're asking as many questions as you can in pre-production. Again, the importance of pre-production, even from a wardrobe perspective. What do you want them to wear? Because I've been on shoots where the first shot, right, and it's creative, and so what happens in the first shot dictates the rest of the shoot. And I go, do you want him wearing this hat or not? And I go, can we shoot it both ways? I don't want to curse, but I hate hearing that. Now, maybe on the last shot, you go, okay, maybe either put the hat on or hat off. Cool, I could do it on the last shot. Why I can't do it on the first shot is now every shot has to be with the hat on or every shot has to be with the hat off. And I don't have time to shoot this twice.
You've essentially doubled the day.
Right. And so we do have to explain that to them. And a lot of times they're nervous to make a decision there because they don't want to get in trouble making the wrong decision. But again, I got to get to editing in 2 days, and this has to be live in a couple of days. So a decision has to be made in 24, 48 hours anyway. But you can't put me behind schedule this whole day. How do you deal with challenges like that? Because it's a pre-production challenge, technically.
yeah.
Having a
Right?
fitting
This
day,
should have
trying
been
to get a fitting
a
in.
fitting day. But we all still deal with somebody walking on set going, oh, who's this guy? And why is he making decisions?
Because a lot of people want to have
off?
opinions. They want to get to set and have opinions and share.
Right.
But a lot of times that
But
makes
again, this is
more
pre-production stuff that can mess you up on production. Now you're rushing around, and you didn't need to be doing this.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something I've come across a lot on set is let's do it both ways. And they're not realizing, right, but we're covering this 7 times or whatever it is.
And it's not a magical one take. Like it takes multiple takes to get that one magic shot from performance or just whatever it may be, sound, this, that, the other thing. So it's not as easy as they think. But again, I think this is what you're trying to figure out in pre-production to not get into those.
Well, and there are ways to do it both ways if you talk about it in pre-production.
Sure.
We were doing something where it was a US version and a European version, and the things in the European version obviously looked much different than the things in the, like, set design wise. And we did need to do it both ways because it did need to look different, and we scheduled accordingly. But we knew about it in pre-production. We knew about it ahead of time. It wasn't a client gets to set and they have this other thing that they want to use and, pull it in and out. And we also planned for, like, in this close-up shot, we don't see those things. We can only do that. We're able to just do that once. But again, things that you uncover in pre-production.
Right, yeah, if it's planned for, then yes. I mean, the answer is almost always yes, right? If it's planned for, we can make the plan work
We don't
together.
want to say no.
Exactly,
We
yeah.
always want to say yes. It's just sometimes
Yeah.
sometimes you can't.
There is one thing I encountered in prep that I loved from the agency client side, because I'm kind of once removed from that, right, as an AD. But I think we had over 30 agency and client folks on set, which is a lot.
That's a lot,
They had their whole room, couches. It was very nice. They made themselves a page in the pre-pro book talking about agency and client responsibilities on the day. I'd never seen it before. And it talked about, simple things, pay attention, watch the monitor, because sometimes they don't. They're busy, they're doing other things.
A lot of
but
times
like,
you're also taking other meetings and you're like, I can get this, but I don't want to hear that this wasn't right then an hour later because I don't have time.
Or we'll get like the most amazing take and we look at them, we're like, you're good? And they're like, oh, I wasn't paying attention.
Exactly. Can we do it again, or
Can
can
we
I
do
see
it
playback
again?
or whatever? So those simple things, but they can go a long way to save time on the day. And then they had things like don't change our minds. We've been prepping this. Like, this was a big job. A lot of prep went into it. And it's like, we've already made these decisions. When we're shooting and the cameras are rolling, don't change your mind. And I saw this page in the book and I was like, this is unbelievable.
Can we get a
Did
copy
it
of
work?
that?
Not exactly,
No,
but the
because
idea
there's
was
also
good.
the other one guy who shows up randomly who isn't part of any of this, and now he's got ideas, or she, whoever. Just like, who is this person?
But sometimes they're the most important person, but they've been too busy throughout the whole, pre-pro process. And then now they're on set and they're the end all be all. And you're like, all right, well, how do we pivot then? Because this person's opinion matters.
And I love that, but Hannah, even as a production manager, to what Brennan just said, knowing who's going to show up so you could have a monitor
Understanding their
for
roles.
client, even food allergies. We want everybody to have a great experience, right? A smooth experience, a great experience, a fun experience. But understanding this, who's coming, how do I make sure there's a video monitor for them if they need it, or comes, or dietary restrictions. Again, all pre-production and a lot in your world too.
Absolutely. And also just making sure that you're set up for them to be able to communicate their feedback and what's the system going to be? Are we going to have somebody in Village with them talking to them? Are we going to relay it? Are we going to give ourselves time for the director to come back and be checking in? Like, just making sure that that's accounted for too, both their comfort, but also their participation in the shoot day.
Yeah, and I think for us, it's always trying to ask all of these questions, and as the bigger the production gets, the more questions you have for pre-production, right? Because any of these things can majorly derail production, and derailing production puts pressure on not only the crew but the talent. If they start feeling it, and then the end product, to your point, getting the best creative that you can, and also budget, right? Because if you start going into overtime, which client or whoever needs to understand, because things weren't figured out in pre-production, who's making that call? Then, like, this is going to cost you potentially thousands of dollars because you didn't think of some of these things.
Because there's 25 people on set that are now going into overtime that we have to pay for.
Well, and how many shoots have you been on where it would, if you could have added just a pre-light or something there to avoid this because you knew the schedule was impossible, instead they end up spending more money going into overtime because that wasn't a budgetable.
Yeah, and that's another thing we do in prep, right? Is
Yeah.
here's a version of the schedule, and then here's a budget, and those two things match. And then here's a different version with that different budget. It's work, right? It takes time, but it allows the opportunity for the client or agency or whomever to make the decision on how they want to move forward with the production.
And I think a lot of that is also just open, honest communication with the client that says, this is our best estimate of what this day is. If things derail and we do go off, we will go into overtime, and this is what our best estimate of what that will cost will be. Like, we have to set up communication and guidelines so that they also understand why we're being so urgent on set to be like, no, we have to keep moving. Because otherwise they're like, let's just do another one.
That's a great point. I think, I'm sorry. And I think something that Gray Sky does particularly well, right, is that, I've seen companies that they're not afraid of the client, but it's like, yeah, the client's the boss, sure. But to create a collaborative environment. And that starts with director, agency, client, all of that. We're working together. We all want the same thing. Same as I do with crew and department heads. You all do that with the agency, client, whomever. And I think that's something you do very well.
And I try to build a schedule. I try to build a little time in. You try to build time in for a couple things, right? Unexpected, but you also try to build in a little collaborative time. Because once you could talk about things in pre-production, but once it's a different story when you're there. And sometimes the client hasn't been on sets before, and all of a sudden they're like, "Whoa, oh, okay."
And sometimes they're
their brain gets thinking, and we want
a
to
little nervous, a little afraid. They don't know that. We've had clients say, "Oh, I didn't know I could ask," or "I didn't know I could say something," or "I didn't know I could, ask for another take." And you're like, "Well, of course you can. This is your production. We're just here to execute your vision."
And I don't know, you may not deal with this because you're more in the creative space with actors, but I think in our world a little bit too. Let's say it's somebody who works there, and they're not used to being on camera. And let's just even say it's teleprompter. I try to give this pre-production practice. Read it out loud. As soon as you hear your voice saying it, it's different. Words may get jumbled together. And you can tell the people who do it and don't do it. And when they don't do it, you're like, oh, crap, we're in for a long day. You're right, because they didn't prep. even though you can only do so much in prep time too, right?
Only so much encouraging.
But that could really derail or make a successful day too. Like, are you prepared? Are you prepared as an actress? Hannah does acting too. Like, you rely on actors to come in to set prepared. Otherwise, you're like, again, what the heck? So there's responsibilities on everybody's part in pre-production. It's our responsibility to try to guide that, right? From an AD perspective, a production manager, producer, whatever that may be. But it's just kind of, I could talk about this for hours. There's so many different topics. So, what are some of the things that you guys can quickly think of are the biggest things to be concerned about in pre-production?
In pre-production, approvals as a second AD, not as a production manager, just if you at all can understand what talent looks ahead of time, like you get on set and you have everybody running around and you have everybody with different opinions suddenly looking at things and you just can't get that person to set and you just can't get rolling. Just approvals would be my big thing as a second AD that I would want.
Okay.
I would second that, actually, no pun intended, with art approvals, lighting approval. How is this going to feel and look on camera? Obviously things are different when you're there, but you can get a lot of that, in advance. And I see a lot in the commercial world. We want to be dark and edgy, and then they don't, because they see it on the monitor and it's scary because so we brighten everything up and now we're relighting, So I would second the approvals thing. To me, it's lots of little things that add up, many of which we've already touched on.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm trying to eliminate as an AD. I'm not going to shave 2 hours off of the schedule because of one critical error, really.
Right.
It's more about these 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes here and there throughout the course of an entire day add up to now we've lost a shot or two that we could have captured.
Props
otherwise.
to be-
We didn't talk about this, but I think the way to mitigate that is mood boards. Storyboarding for the shots. I think it's mood boards for lighting and wardrobe. It's
And props.
and props, yeah, in production design. I think anything that you can share ahead of time with the client to say, this is the direction, are you good? And I know a lot with production design specifically, and wardrobe, because the mood boards typically will have very specific pictures of things, a couch, a table, a shirt. And yes, we can source those exact items, but being able to understand and explain to the client that this is just a general idea. We can't guarantee these exact things. And sometimes that's a hiccup. They get to set and they're like, where's that beautiful couch you had in the mood board? No, we told you. This was just to get to feel, it really, again, comes down to timing. If you don't approve this production design mood board until 2 days before the shoot, we're getting whatever we can get at the store up the road, not ordering something special. So
Absolutely.
And in our world, if they haven't done it before, a lot of times they go, at the end of it, they go, okay, now I understand why
Yeah.
you did all that.
now I know why you
Now
asked so many
asked me a zillion
questions.
questions. It's like, okay, we got there, and then the next one will hopefully be a lot smoother, but
I think for me, rapid fire stuff that takes up a lot of time are camera moves and company moves, like relocating, relighting. I think
well,
that,
that's what we do as AD is trying to
No,
make sure we schedule that.
but I think that over time, especially you with how you've been scheduling, I think that's how we've learned. It's not 10 minutes. It's
Pad them
probably
appropriately.
it's
Yeah.
half an hour.
Oh,
maybe
sure. Like
45
realistic
minutes.
representations of time on the schedule. I mean, one of the things I really respect about Gray Sky is you really try to stick with a 10-hour day, which is still a long day and there's a ton to get through, but that's actually a rarity. The number of times things are just scheduled as 12 and the quality of, how that compromises the quality of work after a certain
For
point.
sure. And especially when you're dealing with corporate clients that work an 8-hour day. A 10-hour day is a long day. Ask them to stay for a 12-hour day and you've lost them. And that's not fair. It's not fair to them. It's not fair to us, the crew, the talent.
In your world, I'm probably 14-hour days and 16-hour days are probably more normal.
Try not to. Yeah. We really try to max at 12.
And it was dangerous for everybody.
Yeah, it becomes a safety concern. We're working with electricity, heavy equipment, sometimes out in the world, and we forget that we're on a street.
Yeah.
People are very focused on their jobs, which is good. But if you have to be sharp.
If you're stacking several days in a row and they're all that long, you're not giving people enough time to go home, rest, repeat.
Oh, and then again, that finished product is going to suffer. We're all there. You can't. Nobody cares about the excuse when they're watching something. Go, oh, well, we had more time. Nobody cares, right?
just
So
see
it's
what's
like
on the
it's what's on the screen is on the screen. So you want to make sure you can't sacrifice that, because of poor pre-production. So what have I left out? What is another?
One of the things we talk about, contingencies, that you kind of build in the contingencies in the schedule.
Oh, yeah, I try to. Sometimes I'm pigeonholed and I just have to make it work on paper and then try our best, right? But yeah, I try to hide secret time or AD time or whatever I want to call it in there, which might be for a company move. You know, I look at the traffic and I'm like, that's 30 minutes. Let's give it 45. And now I have hopefully 15 minutes of free time. Wherever I can sneak it in, that's kind of just for
That's
me
smart, yeah.
to know, or the producer maybe. But, you know, it's the same you would do with a budget.
Sure.
You're not going to spend every dollar that you've planned, because then if somebody needs a cup of coffee, you're over. You know, so it's this. I try to do the same thing with the schedule, just have that little bit of padding and freedom.
Contingencies are very smart because you know something is going to happen. I mean,
It's
at the end of
almost
the
a
day-
one of the only guarantees I think in production is something is going to go not the way you planned it. I'm not going to say it won't go wrong because
Right.
that's not necessarily the case, but not the way you planned it.
And sometimes it's better, right? Sometimes those are happy accidents, and we love that, and it works out even better than we could have planned. You know, it is guesswork. No matter how many years we've been doing this, we're guessing. We're guessing more accurately each day and each year that goes by. But yeah, there's also these happy accidents. I think that's part of why we all got into the business in the first place. And I know Gray Skies is that way, right? It's a creative world that you get to explore and work with people that you care about, and that's the dream.
And
Just
you-
as
you-
passionate.
Yeah.
And you want the best out of everybody. You want a fun set, you know. And believe me, it took a while to get there. Like, you know, well, we were young producers, we were green producers, and it's like, oh. But every time you do it, you learn. I'm never going to do that again. You know, if I could fix that in the schedule or kind of be prepared to ask these questions. I'm not going to stand there waiting for the elevator for 2 hours. I may stand there and wait for the elevator for 2 hours, but it's not because I didn't ask. It's not because I didn't push, and it's not maybe the elevator didn't break. That's another whole problem. But, you know, it's just you learn to ask those questions in pre-production, you know, and I think it's preparation, right?
Because it sets everyone up for success and
Yeah.
to be able to do their job the best and also have the most fun doing it. I mean, there aren't horror stories from Gray Sky sets for a reason. And there are from a lot of other ones.
There are. Yeah.
Now we do our best, you know, so
Yeah.
thank you. So leave anything else out that either of you can think of?
This is like a micro prep thing. It maybe not even for this episode, but
Go ahead.
rehearsals are something that I've watched disappear over the years. You know, when I started, we were shooting on film, and you rehearsed,
You had to, yeah.
and the AC had the tape out for marks, and you know, and this and that, and over the years, as we've gone digital, I've been pressured a lot by sometimes the director, sometimes the producer. Shoot the rehearsal. It's just kind of another, like, one of my personal, like, faux pas. And the reason is because I can actually start rehearsing well before I could start shooting. We did this on the narrative together when I was on camera, and you know, I'd never really done that. And you brought me in way early. We're still lighting. We're working. But I can start rehearsing, loosen up,
Yep.
practice lines, take direction.
Nobody
There's
else
lots-
is looking at you yet.
Yeah, exactly. There's lots of things you can do while other things are happening. And at the end of the day, it speeds up the entire day.
I mean, I
So
think that's
just
what
something I want to lean on.
production is as a whole. It's a bunch of people in a room multitasking.
Exactly.
Backing that actually out rehearsals into the corporate world, I've done it on Zoom with people
Yeah.
before the day. So you have non-actors, you have doctors or whoever. They're nervous or they haven't done this before. I've interviewed people as if it was the day of. Let's just do this. And a lot of
Like a
times
pre-interview.
it's a pre-interview, but it goes such a long way on set that you're not doing it for the first time. Again, you're sometimes dealing with people who've just not done this before or even done teleprompter rehearsals. You know, again, on Zoom, I could bring it up and I could just run through it. That shaves sometimes so much time off the day of then. So that is, I'm glad you brought that up.
And having the scripts ready, having the content ready.
Yes.
We were just on one where
Well,
it
that's
was ready
another
the
thing.
morning of, and nobody had a chance to look at it and get comfortable with it ahead of time.
Well, it's also, you know, I know sometimes they're rewriting things to the last minute. So you're always in preparation, also trying to get
Tweaks is
tweaks
one
and
thing.
tweaks. But
Yeah.
again, like I said, you hear it out loud and these two words are clunky together, or you hear it out loud and it's repetitive. I just said this, you know, but
Or the sentence
Reading
is
it
too
out loud
long.
and
Like,
reading
where are
it
they
in-
taking a breath?
you know, quietly are two different things. We all can, you know, read things, but as soon as you say it out loud, it just obviously changes. It changes. So I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, rehearsals, and it's not always, but it is a big part. If you can get rehearsals built in, you know, on any of it, I think you're saving a lot of time because you want to have more takes that are good versus trying to figure it out and get one take, you know, because you have to move on with something.
Yeah, agreed. And especially if you know, I wouldn't tell a DP it's time to shoot, you know, ideally. Sometimes you have to, but it's like if we're tweaking lights, start rehearsing. then everything's ready. Because the AD dream is everything's ready at the same time. That's the dream, and rehearsals help make that
How
a
often does
reality.
that happen?
Very rarely. We don't have very
We'll
many
do
good
we'll do another
dreams.
episode on that.
Yeah, we have more
That'll
nightmares
be more of a
than
venting
anything.
episode than a learning episode. Well, Brennan, Hannah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think the key here in pre-production is preparation. We've beaten that over the head, but thank you for thank you so much.
You said it before, fix it in post. Let's not fix it in post. Let's fix it in pre.
100%.
Fix it in pre. I think that's a great way to do it. So I think I'm going to call cut, and that's a wrap. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank you so much.
Thank you.